Captain America was my favorite film from this phase, going into this review. But does it still hold up? Welcome back, everybody. Hello, my name is Amanda. You might know me as Vamp. And today, we're going to be talking about Captain America, the first Avenger. Except for then later when we find out that Carol's the first Avenger, but that's besides the point, because this is phase one. This film, for me, was such an amazing movie. I went into this film thinking that I actually wasn't gonna like it because I thought I had these preconceived notions of who Captain America was, and then I saw it and I was like, man, I love Steve Rogers. He's just such a nice stand-up guy who's trying to do the right thing, who has to overcome these crazy odds to even become a hero, and his heart is just so in the right place. I really loved this character, and I really loved this film. Guess I'll say spoiler warning. Do I have to say spoiler warning for these? Do we say that thing? Spoiler warning, but also, come on, if you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing? This is a film that is basically Captain America's origin story. We find out how he becomes a super soldier. We find out what happens during the war when he's fighting in the war. So it's a classical story. It's a period piece. There's a lot of fun to be had with those elements of it. Or, you know, there would have been if this film had more to it.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
Basically, it follows Steve as he meets Dr. Erskine. He gets the procedure to become a super soldier. Initially, he's kind of being shafted and being used to promote bonds and go on tour and be in films to help the war effort. But then eventually, he forces his way into action when he finds out that his friend, Bucky Barnes, who is a part of the 107th Regiment, has gone missing in action and is presumed to be could be dead, but also could be just kidnapped. No one wants to have this rescue mission happen because it's just too dangerous and they only lost 30 men. And so Steve teams up with Peggy and with the help of Howard Stark, Tony's dad, goes behind enemy lines to retrieve Bucky. We get the Howling Commandos. Steve then gets to be in action, and eventually he takes the fight right to Red Skull and Hydra, who are obviously working for the opposite side of the war during World War II. He also is forced to confront the fact that Red Skull is kind of like his darker shadow, in the sense that Red Skull also underwent a super soldier transformation, but his went wonky. And so as a result of that, his skin is burned off and he has the, the Red Skull look. And I love how they played with those elements of, this villain being such a good foil for Steve. I like that we got Red Skull in the first movie, but I do have some issues with this film. It ends with Steve in the ice, and actually how this film begins is with us finding him in the ice. So finding him in the ice, and then flash back to his whole origin story, and then flash forward to him being found in the ice after he goes down to prevent a big explosion from happening near New York City. Goes down in the ocean, we never find him again. We somehow find the cube that was lost, the cosmic cube, or do we call it a cosmic cube in the MCU? The Tesseract, cosmic cube, you know what I mean. In the MCU, we call it a Tesseract. And they find that, but they don't end up finding Steve until 70 years later when he's retrieved from the ice. And then teaser for Avengers, and that's basically the end. So how do I feel about this movie? Ultimately, I gotta say, I was pretty disappointed going back to it because, guys, it's boring. Why is it so boring? I don't remember it being this boring, but it just feels like we're walking through the motions. I mean, stuff happens. Some of it's exciting. I remember that pretty exciting chase after Steve first becomes a super soldier and he's running through the streets and he's barefoot. I mean, the CG and the green screen looks a little rough in that part, but Peggy standing a vehicle down and not moving because she's so convinced that her shot is that good. Moments like that are exciting, but most of the film is not that. It's people not really doing much. It's people standing around talking about things, and it's a lot of montages. Too many montages, because the runtime for this movie is 2 hours. And for the amount of montages they have, I feel like they could have just cut some down. A lot of it feels like a slideshow of things happening. Like, this thing happened, and then Steve went around and he went on tour, and we're seeing him on tour, and there's training happening, and we're seeing all the training happening at the military base. And, you know, they're going out and they're going on missions, and here's a montage of them going on missions with the Howling Commandos. Everything is a freaking montage in this movie. Most of the movie feels like one long montage of stuff. And let's not even forget about the weirdest montage of them all, which is kind of, I guess, more of a flashback if you will, to when Dr. Erskine is talking about working with Johann Schmidt and how Johann Schmidt had this vision for the super soldier serum, and Dr. Erskine didn't agree, and he ended up escaping and getting away, and that's now he's able to work with America. On the other side, he basically defected, and that whole scene where he's talking about Johann and what happened to him, it felt so weirdly psychedelic. I don't even remember that being in the movie. I was like, what is happening? Why does it look like this? Why is it so weird? So oddly enough, it's the most stylistic part of the film. It's also the weirdest part. And I wish in a way that there was more of it in retrospect. Which feels odd because it feels so out of place. But my biggest complaint with this movie is that it just feels so safe. It feels so bland. Like, there's no substance. You have to think, we came out of Thor with so many Dutch angles and just such a powerful sense of style. And Iron Man, where they were just trying new things and clearly having a lot of fun on that set. And this feels like we're kind of starting to see a shift to maybe more of a corporate focus, where they're like, this is what we need to hit, and it all has to be a certain way in this box. Even the director that we have for this film, Joe Johntson, I was surprised because I thought to myself, that's interesting, because Joe Johnston's actually directed a lot of amazing films, like some really epic movies that I think have a lot of substance to them, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Jumanji. These are classics. And yet with Captain America, it feels like they're trying to tick off all the boxes of it being classic without actually trying to bring anything of emotional weight or style to the film.
Yeah, I had to improvise a little bit.
Especially the colors in this film. It just feels so devoid of color. And I understand that it's, you know, a period piece. So I feel like we're kind of trying to go for maybe a little bit of a sepia almost vibe to it. It's not quite sepia, but just that sense of it being, you know, it's in the past. It's got to feel old-timey. It's got to feel a little old-fashioned. But we could have also bumped up some of those colors. I know it's war times and things are bleak, but the film doesn't have to feel bleak for my eyeballs the entire way through. It has a feeling of gray to it. It has a feeling of just a flatness. It honestly felt so bland. It was like Steve Rogers drinking a glass of milk for 2 hours. You know how people always make that joke in the comics that Steve likes to drink milk? It just felt like that level of safe. And I think the reality is it just doesn't need to be that long. I think this film actually would have been better if it was a nice, really tight 90-minute film where instead of having so many montages, we just picked one moment to represent that montage. We just had one little scene where things actually happen as opposed to us just showing you the idea of things happening. Once again, it is still visual, but it's borderline telling instead of showing, because everything's done in montages as opposed to being done in a present moment for the characters where we feel the weight of a situation. The montages are used to fuel other scenes that come after, but not in a way that actually leads to those scenes feeling more impactful or meaningful. But I think that was the idea of them, is to give it ammunition and to show almost as well the passage of time in Steve's life as we go through it. But the strange thing is, everyone in this movie is good.
Remember when I made you ride the Cyclone at Coney Island?
Yeah, and I threw up.
While I don't feel that the way that any of this is presented is interesting, Chris Evans still somehow really shines as Steve. Obviously, Hayley Atwell as Peggy Carter is another standout. Dominic Cooper as young Howard Stark. And Tommy Lee Jones, who I always forget is in this movie, and then I watch it and I'm like, oh yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is in here. And he's actually really good as Colonel Phillips.
Well, if it isn't the Star-Spangled Man with a plan, what is your plan today?
So there's some standout folks that do a good job with what they're given, but they're just not given very much to do is the problem, other than Steve. He gets the most to do, and even that feels like it's just kind of like going through the motions at times. Sebastian Stan doesn't even get an opportunity to really shine in this film, I felt, because there's just nothing going on. And so we know how good Sebastian Stan is now in the present. So to see that is just like, it's just kind of disappointing. The fact that this has 80% on Rotten Tomatoes is insane to me. What were we smoking back then? Were we all right? Like, this film does not feel like 80%. It feels like it's just okay. Also, there's more CGI fire. Some of the CG in this and some of the green screen in this is pretty bad, guys. I gotta be honest with you. So overall, I think despite the fact that there's some actors in it that are really amazing and that actually do a good job as these characters, which is probably why after this we still got to see more of them, even though they didn't have a ton of screen time in this movie. I'm gonna give this one a 3 out of 5. Despite that, because that's just how boring it was. It's just feels long. It's only 2 hours and it feels like a long movie. And it also feels like not enough happens for how long it is. So yeah, 3 out of 5. And I mean, I'm really only giving it a 3 out of 5 for the cast. I feel like more than anything. I think that's the major takeaway. And the character. I do think Captain America is presented well here, but I just don't think we do anything particularly interesting with him, even though the film does, I think, understand who Steve is as a character, which is why it resonated with me probably at the time, and why now that I've taken my rose-tinted glasses off for this rewatch, I'm feeling that it's just not enough to sustain a film. I think I was so wowed by it at the time that I just loved it, and now I'm just like, I mean, that's not enough to make the film great, though. The film's just okay. It's good. It's Iron Man 2 levels. Is that crazy? I don't know, but I said it. That's all I have for this one, friends. Next up, we're going to be watching Avengers, and make sure you tune into Avengers. You're going to want to watch that review, because I watched the trailer at the end of this, and oh boy, Avengers. This is a beloved film. This is a film that a lot of people talk about as being the high of the high for us in terms of old school MCU days. People say, what happened to the writing? Think about how good things were in Avengers. And I can't wait to see how I feel about that. How I feel about the writing and the action and the CG fire, if there's any CG fire there in Avengers. So far in the trailer, I've seen a lot of real explosions, real fire. And that looked pretty good. But that trailer is such a trailer of the times. If you missed my previous review of Thor, you can check that out here. I highly recommend it. Thor really surprised me in some interesting ways. That's all I have for this one. Until next time, as always, friends, stay nerdy. Bye! And let me know what you think of Captain America in the comments.